Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Janda, and please welcome to our Operation Freedom platform, WeThePeopleProcessing.com. You know, are you tired of being threatened to be canceled just because you have a company focused on liberty and freedom? Well, worry no more, folks. WeThePeopleProcessing.com is your go-to merchant services, freedom-based company to provide business service payment solutions. We the People Processing provides their clients a cancel culture-free platform which is domestically based. They provide competitive rates, no contracts with next-day funding, a fully vetted and like-minded financial infrastructure, and full support for integrations, implementation, and e-commerce efforts. Bottom line, WeThePeopleProcessing.com focuses on defending your company's free market growth, values, and future. Check them out at www.WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Once you're on the site, enter in password Operation Freedom or call 855-499-2024. That's WeThePeopleProcessing.com. Then, when on the website, enter Operation Freedom as your password or call 855-499-2024.
My Christmas message. Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday Season, Happy New Year message to every one of our listeners and everyone who has supported this platform. Without your help, without your support, without you networking this show, the YouTube platform, the website, to those in your friends, your families, your communities, well, I don't think we would have 1/1,000,000th of the impact that we have had. And how do I know we have had an impact? Some of the very positive feedback I get from you, our listeners, but also some of the really significant blowback we get from some of the real evildoers in the deep state. We have done this show, and along with the YouTubes and along with the Operation Freedom YouTube channel and along with the website, DaveJanda.com, the blowback this year has been the most we've ever had. We have had significant blowback in the past, but this year topped it off. And some would see that as a negative thing. I see that as a positive thing. It means that we have the deep state right where we need them. They are desperate, they are panicked, and they are losing. And it's because of you and your efforts of networking this information. The more people that are educated with the facts that the bought-off lamestream fake media will never provide, that we do. The more people that are educated with the facts, the more people that become empowered. And the more people that are empowered, the sooner we end this reign of terror that's many decades long by the deep state. So on behalf of myself, my wingman Derek, Nick Ruiz, our Director of IT Services at DaveJanda.com and Operation Freedom, our entire team of IT professionals, our entire team at DaveJanda.com, Operation Freedom, I'd like to wish every one of you a Merry Christmas, a Happy Holiday Season, and a Happy New Year. So, as my present to you this year, I always try to give you some presents. My first present is going to be based on our flag. And I always try to do something related to the flag and the Star-Spangled Banner. And this year's presentation is a little bit different than the last couple years' presentations. This one is done by an individual by the name of Dudley Rutherford, a very articulate spokesperson for freedom. Website is flagrespect.com. And I'm going to have Derek play for you a tribute that Dudley Rutherford did about the making of the Star-Spangled Banner. You know, with the Kaepernicks of the world and the like, there's been an attack on the flag. on the song, and I believe on what it represents. So every time you hear the Star-Spangled Banner, and every time you see one of those dweebs with their head down and taking a knee, think of what Dudley Rutherford presents. Derek, hit it.
Have you ever gone to an athletic event and as someone was singing the national anthem, the people around you were not even paying attention? They didn't have their hand over their heart. They hadn't removed a hat from their head. Perhaps they were chatting with a friend and not even looking at the flag, just disengaged and disconnected. In a sense, by their casualness, they weren't just disrespecting the national anthem. They were disrespecting the men and women in the armed forces who have valiantly served our country, those who've bled and died defending the freedoms of our nation. It is my belief that if you only knew the story behind the Star-Spangled Banner, it would cause you to stand at attention, almost like a soldier yourself, with reverence and gratitude. You would sing the anthem with all of your heart, and in so doing, you would be telling the world how grateful you are to live in the greatest nation in the world, the United States of America. Let me tell you the story behind the Star-Spangled Banner. There was a young lawyer by the name of Francis Scott Key who lived in Baltimore, Maryland in the early 1800s. At the time, our nation was engaged in vicious conflict with Britain. After the Revolutionary War, the British had suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of the United States, and up until 1814, they had been on the defensive. But in August 1814, determined not to be embarrassed again, the British saw their opportunity to get on the offensive. They exacted their revenge by capturing our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., chasing President Madison and his wife from the city and burning many of our government buildings. Then the British headed to Baltimore, the nation's third most populated city, to attack a fort called Fort McHenry. Along the way, Britain had accumulated prisoners, and we know that some of the prisoners had been placed aboard those British warships. One of the prisoners was a man named Dr. William Beans. Dr. Beans had many prominent friends and neighbors who enlisted the services of one Francis Scott Key to negotiate with the British for his release. Francis Scott Key agreed and arranged to have Colonel John Skinner, American agent for prisoner exchange, accompany him. On the appointed day, the men rowed out in a little boat and boarded a British ship to secure the release of Dr. Beans. After nearly a week of negotiations, they were successful. That's the good news. The bad news is that the British decided that they were first going to attack Fort McHenry and that they wouldn't release any prisoner until after the fort had been destroyed. You see, Fort McHenry was a strategically located military base which was defended by 1,000 men. It stood on the end of a peninsula guarding the city of Baltimore, and the British knew that the defeat of Fort McHenry and its 1,000 men would serve as another demoralizing event for the Americans. So the plan of the British war fleet, which included some 16 to 19 warships, was to mercilessly fire their superior weapons and completely annihilate Fort McHenry. Then the British could send in its lighter ships up into the harbor and begin to bombard the rest of Baltimore. This is a critical moment in the history of our young nation. For even though we had become a sovereign nation in 1776, the United States was still fighting for total independence from the British due to Britain's interference in our expansion, trade, and other freedoms. On September 13, 1814, as morning dawned and as the haze hung over the ocean, the British war fleet was unleashed. Boom, 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 boom. For 1 hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours. Boom, boom, the guns raged. The sound must have been deafening. Boom, boom, boom for 12 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours, for 24 hours. The British war fleet pounded Fort McHenry relentlessly with no relief in sight. The Americans inside Fort McHenry were unable to respond because their guns were not as powerful as the British artillery. Witnessing the bombardment, it must have looked like a spectacular fireworks display. Francis Scott Key, he paced the ship all night long, back and forth. At times he could see the American flag in the illuminated red glare of each bomb. No doubt if he had seen a white flag waving, he would have known that the Americans were surrendering. But as long as he could see the red, white, and blue flag waving, he knew that the men inside that fort were not giving up. Don't you believe that there had to be some prisoners on board some of those warships who were wondering, is the flag still there? Is the flag still there? Is the flag still there? Because you see, that flag stood for the United States of America. It was that flag that stood for the freedoms that our nation cherishes today. It was that flag that stood for the men and women who died to give us our independence. Well, after more than 24 hours of constant bombardment, finally there was silence. And as morning dawned on September 14th, 1814, when the heavy mist and the smoke from the gunfire had lifted, there, standing proudly, flying high above the rampart, blowing back and forth in the wind, was the huge 30-foot by 42-foot American flag. Major George Armistead, the commander of Fort McHenry, had commissioned a widow to make this flag. He wanted it to be so large that the British wouldn't have any trouble seeing it from the distance, waving proudly. Miraculously, the damage to the fort was minimal. Of the 1,000 soldiers, 4 were killed. The United States did not yield, and the British eventually withdrew from the Baltimore harbor, deeming the battle to be too costly. The tide of the war was reversed. There at the Battle of Fort McHenry, just a few months later, a peace treaty was signed between the United States and Britain. It was upon the release of the prisoners that Francis Scott Key made his way back into Baltimore. And after such a dramatic and emotional occasion, the young lawyer was inspired to pen the following words. "Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?" It is my prayer that whenever we see the flag, which represents the United States of America, and whenever we hear the words of the Star-Spangled Banner as it is sung, that we would stand in reverence for the miraculous events of that night in 1814, to honor the courageous men and women who have fought to keep our flag waving. May we always stand. May we always remove our hats. May we always place our hand over our hearts. And may we always sing with all of our heart as we give honor and respect to the flag and to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for this great nation of ours, the United States of America.
That was Dudley Rutherford, flagrespect.com. So when you hear that song played, I hope that you'll go back to what Dudley Rutherford spoke about the history of that song, about the flag, and think about all those who sacrificed their lives for that flag, for that country, for your freedoms, and for your liberties. My second present to you is something I learned through President Reagan. I first went to Washington in 1988 toward the end of the Reagan administration to work on healthcare policy. And this was passed on to me by one of his Secret Service agents. Every day when Ronald Reagan went to the Oval Office, before he started to work, he would bow his head and he would say the following words: Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is doubt, let me sow faith. Where there is despair, let me sow hope. And where there is darkness, let me sow light. Faith, hope, and light. My third present to you was something that my mom provided through a history lesson. And I brought that lesson forward on my YouTube channel this past week. It was about what happened on Christmas in 1914 and 1915 in World War I. It's when both sides in that conflict put their arms down and walked across the killing fields and shook hands. It's something that the deep state does not want you to know about. You see, the deep state is all about war and chaos. They're also about death and destruction. On Christmas night, throughout Christmas Day, the Allies and the Germans stopped fighting. They held a soccer match. They exchanged presents. When that happened in 1914, the power brokers of the deep state that were running the war wanted to make sure that it never happened again. But it did. In 1915. It shows the power of Christmas. Go to a YouTube channel, Operation Freedom. Listen to that presentation, my mom's story. My fourth present to you is my favorite Christmas song by my favorite singer of Christmas songs, Dean Martin. The song is White Christmas. Now, one of the reasons why Dean Martin is one of my favorites is because Dean Martin and I met at the Sands Hotel in the restaurant in 1963. Dave Janda was 5 years old. And my parents brought me to the restaurant that night. And as I was sitting at our table, Dean Martin walked in and sat down at the table next to us. At that time, I've always been a talker, and I was talking even at 5 years of age, and I was yapping away, and Dean Martin was listening to the conversation between myself and my parents and my grandmother, and he walked over to the table, and he said, I'm listening to your son, and it made me sad because I have a son his age as well, and I miss him terribly. Would you mind if I held your son and talked to him? Because I really miss my son. My parents were like, yeah, go right ahead, hey, whatever. So he picked me up. And as he picked me up, I remember my parents' faces and my grandmother's faces were like nothing I had. It's one of those memories that you don't forget, even at that young age. They were not starstruck, but just kind of like just stunned. And I remember speaking to him, and the details of which was told to me many times by my mom and my dad and my grandmother. He asked who I was, and I introduced myself as David, and I asked him who he was, and he said, my name's Dean. And I looked at him and I said, well, Mr. Dean, what do you do? And he said, I sing. I said, well, I sing too. And he said, well, what do you sing, David? And I said, I sing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. He said, will you sing it for me? So I did. And I was about halfway through Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Dean Martin decided it was going to be a duet. And he started to sing with me. Well, Dave Janda didn't do duets at 5 years of age. And what I did is I put my finger over his lips to shut him up. As I did that, he started laughing. And as he started doing this, Sammy Davis, the rest of the Rat Pack walked in. Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop walked in. Sinatra didn't make it to dinner that night. And they all just started roaring laughing. And as we finished the song, my dinner came, and I looked at Dean Martin and said, Mr. Dean, please set me down. My dinner is here. So he set me down, I ate dinner, and throughout while I was eating dinner, they kept calling over and trying to talk to me, and I would kind of talk to them a little bit and then go back to chowing down, which surprises no one in my family that I would do this. But it's interesting. Dean Martin died Christmas Day, 1995. He died a broken man. His son, who was the same age as me at the time, his name was Dino. Dino became a fighter pilot, and in 1987, Dino died in a fighter when his plane crashed. People who knew Dean Martin said he was never the same after that, and he died a broken man. So for my buddy, Mr. Dean, I'd like to play for you my favorite Christmas song, White Christmas. Derek?
May your days be merry and bright,
and may all your Christmases be white.
Ding dong, ding dong, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas,
Just like the one I used to know, where the treetops glisten and children listen to hear sleigh bells in the snow. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, with every Christmas card that I write. May your days be merry and bright, and may all your Christmases be white.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas,
With every Christmas card I write, may your days be merry and bright, and may all your Christmases be white.
On behalf of all of us with Operation Freedom and DaveJanda.com, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, faith, hope, and light. Dream big and dare to fail.